Technical issues. We are finally ready to go. This is episode 7. We have some super cool people in the building today. Cheska and Chandi, who are both F&M students. These are some pretty amazing people, and I've been blessed to kind of get to know them a little bit. I'm going to kind of let them explain, what they do, what their majors are, kind of what they're into, and then we'll kind of go from there. So you can go ahead, Cheska.
Yeah, so my name is Cheska Perez. I am a sophomore at Franklin Marshall College. I'm majoring in government and computer science, and just a little bit about what I do. Prior to coming to F&M, I worked on the 2016 presidential election for Hillary Clinton, both on the field side and in the data side for Colorado. And I founded and was the former president of the Find American chapter at Franklin Marshall.
Dope.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us. My name is Chandrakant, and my friends call me Chandi.
Okay.
I'm a student here at F&M from Brooklyn, New York. I moved to the United States 5 years ago from Guyana, and now I'm here at F&M in Lancaster, enjoying the place.
Yeah.
I'm a major in scientific and philosophical studies of the mind, which is basically a combination of psychology and philosophy.
Wow.
And I'm very involved in the arts. I'm an artist here as well.
Yeah.
So that's
I love
a little
Chandi's
bit about
art.
me.
Wow, super cool. This is an exclusive. We got a celebrity and an artist in the building. Pretty crazy times. So talk to us about F&M. So you're both not from Lancaster. So talk about coming to F&M and kind of your experience so far at F&M and being in Lancaster.
Yeah, do you want to start? You've been here longer,
Oh,
Chandi.
yeah. I've been here for 3 years now at F&M. And it in some ways feels like a really long time, but it also feels like a short time because I'm graduating in the next year.
Yeah.
But like moving out here has been a really big change in my life. Moving to New York from Guyana has been a really big change. And as I was getting adapted to that and getting used to the city, like 3 years later, I moved out here. 2 years later, I was out here. And everything was so much more different. Like there's so many more people that I've never seen before. The space is somewhat more diverse and also at the same time somewhat less diverse for me. And it's an interesting place to balance a social life.
Yeah, I'm sure. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and then for me, I came from Las Vegas, Nevada, so very far away. No, not so far away, I guess then. But it was an interesting experience coming to Franklin Marshall 2 years ago, where I found it actually the least diverse place I've ever been to. Mind you, University of Nevada, Las Vegas is the most diverse institution in the nation, and
Interesting.
it's only 2 miles away from me.
Okay.
So that's the environment that I grew up in. What I think I miss the most, and it's not particular to F&M, or maybe it is, but the food.
Yes.
Oh my God, the diversity in the food. I'm sorry, but today I was like, I just need some good Asian food. So I took some order out. But no, F&M was an interesting place to go to, and I particularly chose it for the reasons, that I found it for. That I was going to be different, right?
Yeah.
Than from the places that I grew up in, LA and Las Vegas, and from the Philippines where I was born. And it challenged me in a good way, and I was able to really learn from a lot of it.
Cool. How did you guys find out about F&M?
For me, I did not know about F&M until I found out about Posse,
Gotcha.
the Posse Foundation, which is a foundation that gives students from inner cities an opportunity to go to small liberal arts college in groups, and the organization pays or tries to cover our tuition, our full tuition. So that's how I learned about Posse. I got nominated for. That's how I learned about F&M. I got nominated for Posse, and
Nice.
then I learned about it through that. But beside that, I had no idea what F&M was. I had a really short time learning about F&M, like in my process of deciding whether or not I should be coming here.
Gotcha.
But it was mostly a blind move, to be honest.
Yeah.
I visited campus the summer right before we started, and I had already gotten
Wow, you
in.
visited campus.
Yeah,
Really?
but I did not visit before I made a decision. But
Wow.
nonetheless,
Same. I'm in the same boat. Don't worry.
I don't regret it. It's an amazing place. I really
Yeah.
love like the challenge, the academic challenge I get at FNM.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, that's how I found out.
Okay.
It was a blind move.
Yeah, can you explain like kind of like the mission of Posse and what like kind of what that program's goal is?
Right. So back, I think it was 30 years ago, I believe. A student dropped out of college, and he said that if I had my posse with me, I would not have. I would have continued. And with that event, there came a foundation grew that aimed in supporting students in their move to college,
Gotcha.
having them graduate together. So it's a kind of support network that's moving to college together to have that
Nice.
transition and foundation as they're going through the education process.
Very cool. Are you also Posse?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
No.
Gotcha.
But I'm in a similar scholarship program. We are very small in
Okay.
comparison to Posse. Most folks actually don't know about it in Franklin Marshall. It's called Golden Doors Scholars.
Cool.
At the moment, there's only 3 of us, so there's one per
Okay.
cohort. We're the smallest in all the institutions across the nation
Yeah.
because it's a very recent partnership.
Mhm.
But the way that I found out about FNM actually was a year into my gap year. So the first instance that I was doing my college admissions in my senior year, I actually didn't know about FNM at all. But during my gap years, because I took 2 years prior to coming to FNM to work in the election, I found out about FNM because I'm particularly open about this personal information about me. I'm undocumented.
Mhm.
So I was looking for institutions that were, admitting undocumented students as domestic students, not international students, and was
Gotcha.
also good in financial aid, and that was something of priority to me. FNM stuck out in that way, in that they have 100% fully demonstrated need, and also have undocumented students or DACA students admit as domestic students. And so they were in partnership with a scholarship program called the Dream.US, which is the largest undocumented full ride scholarship program in the nation. And from there, I found my scholarship program, which is very similar but smaller scale than the Dream.US, which then now I'm here. So, yeah.
Wow. Crazy. Okay, so you both have like pretty crazy stories of how you ended up here. Being on campus, what are some of the struggles that come with being an FNM student and an FNM student that isn't local?
Oh.
Well, remember earlier I mentioned I find it not diverse. That's one thing I find it. And that is because moving from New York, where there's so many people of color around me, and people that I felt more connected to, people I shared a culture with, it was easier for me to engage with a community there and maintain the kind of cultural connection that I had growing up in Guyana. But moving here to Lancaster, to FNM, I don't have that as much. There are like less than 10 Guyanese people at FNM, and people that I can really connect with in the ways I used to before.
Yeah.
But this is the part where it's diverse for me now because there are so many people that I've never met before. I've never been around such a wide population of people from all around the world. So now I'm making new connections. It's a kind of a good thing in one way and a bad thing in one way, but it's a balance that I'm dealing with right now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because it's very similar to me. I've actually been 3 semesters in as chair of diversity committee for our school.
Nice.
And it's because, again, coming in, I knew it would be one of the most undiverse least diverse places I would be in. And in that respect, I wanted to ensure I can really put in the effort to know what I can contribute in terms of diversity and inclusion at FNM. And I think it's really interesting in a way that FNM is doing a really big scale internationalization or globalization. We have an 18% student population of international students.
Interesting.
Which is increasing every single year. The class of 2022, the most recent class was actually 20% international students.
Wow.
And by far, if you look at small liberal arts institutions, we are like skyrocketing in terms of internationalization, which is good, right?
Yeah.
The more global perspective that we can bring to the student body, that's great. However, domestically, we are lacking in terms of the ethnic diversity and socioeconomic diversity, which is very important.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That provides different perspectives that really demonstrates the privilege of F&M students. And so that's what I find really struggling, is because you see this division, I would say, of the student population, where you see that there's not a lot of support for a certain student group, and then there's in another student group there's already support there because of their families and their backgrounds, and they're accommodated for everything else.
Gotcha.
And so I think F&M is really good in a way that they're striving, it's just not, they're not catching up enough.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's interesting because I know one of the academic, I guess he's one of the, I forget what you call them. They interview you before you get accepted to school, you know, administration people. And he was like, yeah, we basically accept kids that have rich families or have a good GPA.
I mean, institutions are businesses.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's a private college.
He was,
Exactly.
yeah, he's like, those are our two agendas, you know, good grades and money. And I was like, that's very interesting. And it shows. I mean, F&M, it shows. And it's also very like, your dad kind of went there kind of school. It has that small Ivy thing that it's looking for. In terms of like minority students, is it very collective? Do you guys all kind of band together? Is it divisive? Like, what in terms of there's not that many of you as like local minority, like domestically minority students. How is that relationship with you guys on campus?
In my experience at F&M, it's pretty much separated. There's just large groups of white students that are always interacting with each other, and then large groups of generally students of color interacting with each other. And international students are also in I would say, a separate group. But students interact with each other around all, but from a wider perspective, you can see clear divisions and lack of interaction among some students. And that's a problem right now on F&M campus because it's causing tensions between groups.
Gotcha. Like minority student groups, or like just student groups in general.
I think student groups in general. I
Yeah.
think like in this, I think where we see the divisions lay in the most is the social aspect of F&M,
Yeah,
right?
Gotcha.
So like
That is-
fraternities and sororities, predominantly white. Like
Yeah.
that is, it's gonna be true of almost all institutions across the
Exactly.
nation. But it is very, very, you can really observe it at F&M.
Yeah.
Whereas in terms of multicultural organizations, of course, there's going to be groupings in there because you do accommodate to a certain identity of an individual.
Right.
And in that respect, it is actually very inclusive. Our
Gotcha.
multicultural organization groups are very, very
That's
inclusive. But we don't see a lot of, non-minorities. We don't see a lot of whites
Yeah.
coming in and like
Gotcha.
wanting to learn more. And so within minority groups, right, domestic minority students, there's around 30% of us. You can
Okay.
see a lot of interaction in between there. But on a
Right,
day-to-day basis, we don't see a lot of white minority student interaction. And you can see this even with the friend groups. You can see this with dorming, right, situations.
Yeah.
Roommates
Interesting.
are
On floors, like you
Yeah.
find different groups of students.
Ah, that is very interesting. Some
Yeah.
dear white people shit. I've always compared F&M to dear white people.
It fits.
It seems like a very similar dynamic.
Yeah.
There's the Black House and there's the White House. Wow, that's super interesting. Okay, so what's one thing that kind of like each of you, obviously you're diversity chair, like what's kind of like your mission as students here? You see this issue, you're trying to tackle it, like what are your goals?
That's a hard question.
It is.
In terms of diversity,
In terms of campus culture, diversity?
I think for me, right, it's actually funny that I love talking about diversity, especially in a higher ed way.
Yeah.
And I definitely, enjoy spaces where we can strategize how to be more inclusive and bring in a sense of belonging on campus, which
Yeah.
isn't often talked about. But what many people know me as at F&M is more for my work with my club called Define American.
Yeah, that's how I found out about you.
Yes, and
yeah.
so Define American, we are a student-led organization that strives to advance justice for the immigrant and refugee community through education,
Gotcha.
advocacy, and service. And the way that we do that is through storytelling, actually. Right? We
Nice.
transcend politics in that way. And I think my goal personally is to empower students
Yeah.
to be able to tell their own story and utilize that to fit whatever their goal is, and then
Yeah.
and empower them in that way to lead, right? And I think for me, it's leadership development. So
Yeah.
during my time here at F&M, what I want to do is, I want to figure out how the system works, how the
Yeah.
institution works, so that I can
Yeah.
help other students
Interesting.
go through the system and figure out what they want to accomplish within,
Mm-hmm.
and then also expand the system out in terms that we can empower others to do that as well.
Very
And that I don't find often at F&M, because our transitions for leadership is very much lacking.
Yeah. Well, those are inclusion tactics kind of thing.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's my whole goal here at F&M.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
For me, well, I try. I'm a part of Impact.
Mm-hmm.
It stands for Intelligent Men Purposefully Accomplishing College Together.
Yeah.
And what we do is community service. So that's our main thing. We try to support each other in our education, but we're also there to support the community. And so we would participate in community-based activities, try to reach out to the community. We volunteer at Water Street Mission on Sundays.
Gotcha.
And in that way, we're engaging with the environment and the
Yeah.
community around us. And I'm also an artist, and through my art, I'm trying to reach out to more people.
Yeah.
Taking that initiative to make the step to try
Yeah.
to expand my horizons and get to
Exactly.
know new people. Because if I'm expecting another person to do it and they're not, then I have to make a move.
Yeah.
And right now, I'm starting a project, and through that project, hoping to get outreach to more people. And
Yeah.
so that's my way of approaching this.
That's interesting. We'll talk about that project in a minute. Those are interesting things because, I'm a diversity consultant, so
Right.
that's what I do as part of my job. And what's interesting is I've researched kind of the three colleges and their kind of diversity initiatives and what each of their diversity directors does, who does what. And I did this back before I was doing diversity consulting. Because at one point I was writing a proposal for an office for a college. So I was mapping out an office to propose to Lancaster Bible College. And so I looked into what other colleges were doing. And your diversity office is very interesting because you guys have, for a decade, been trying to get local students to come. So you've been trying to get inner city students to come forever, and they're just now starting to come.
Yeah.
And they're only coming by one or two. So that's very interesting to me. Do you guys know those people, first of all? Do you know the people that are local?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
How is their transition? Because F&M and Lancaster are, when I thought about F&M growing up, F&M was its own world inside of Lancaster. F&M, it's definitely in Lancaster, and you're a part of Lancaster, but you guys really are, of all the
bubble.
colleges, a bubble.
Yeah.
So what are those people like inside of F&M?
It's a whole different culture there. It's so different. Everything that exists within that bubble, it keeps students there. It doesn't, because everything is available there. You have no need to go out there. You don't want to. At least.
It's amazing to me, actually.
Yeah.
Every time I meet somebody from F&M, they have no clue what even the center of the city looks like half the
Right.
time.
Or
Right.
how far it is.
Yeah.
Honestly,
It's like
only a
5
mile
minutes.
away. Honestly.
You don't even realize that being in there, how close it is. Because when I lived on campus, I lived in the dorms for 2 years, and in those 2 years, I've gone downtown and visited some places around. But after I moved off campus and I'm now 10 minutes away from downtown, there's so many more places that I've never gone to, and when I go to them, I'm like, how did I miss this for 2 years?
Yeah, it's super interesting because I'm dating somebody from F&M, and I took her to Prince Street for Cafe for the first time, and I was like, how have you been here for she's a senior there, and I was like, how have you been here for 4 years and you've never been to Prince Street Cafe?
Oh my god.
This is
yeah.
if you're from Lancaster, that's where you
Right,
go.
that's the spot.
Yeah, yeah,
it's
the
always
spot.
popping.
Yeah, there's always something going on.
Oh my
So
god.
that's so in terms of so I know you guys all know about Atalo, because nobody from F&M doesn't know about Atalo.
I hope not.
Yeah, I know Jordan, and Jordan had a plan. He was like, I'm gonna go to F&M. That's where I'm gonna get my interns, and that was it. Are there any other nonprofits that ever often reach out? Do you get much interaction with the nonprofits that are local?
Yeah, so for me, I reached out to a lot of nonprofits actually first when I first came here. So within the first week or two of being in Lancaster, I really got involved with Church World Service.
Oh, nice. I like those people.
Yeah, and so from them, I've been working a lot in terms of the immigrant and refugee community here, reaching out to a lot of undocumented folks because they have a
Gotcha.
smaller group called the Lancaster Dreamers,
Yeah.
and working with them in terms of higher ed access, for healthcare as well too,
Gotcha.
and all that sort advocacy. And so I've been able to work with not only Church World Service, but a whole myriad of their partners
Gotcha.
here in Lancaster. And so we see that partnership as well extend on FNM in the campus through our Ware Institute.
Nice.
So they've been amazing in terms of really relaying people to nonprofits who would, or people who would want to work in nonprofits outside of FNM. And
So
bring
they
that
kind of
bubble
are
in.
that connection base.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And so you must know Mustafa.
Yes.
Cool.
Oh my
That's
God.
it.
Wait, Mustafa and I are actually going to meet tomorrow at TELUS.
Oh,
Yeah.
word. Okay, I love Mustafa.
I love Mustafa.
We have this thing going where we will run into each other and be like, "Hey, do you want to go get coffee?" And we'll both be like, "Yes." And then we'll both forget, and we'll both call each other, and we're running to each other again, be like, "Hey, did you also forget?" And he'll be like, "Yeah." And so we're still trying to figure out when to actually
That
hang
is so
out. But
funny.
I love Mustafa. He's a great guy. But that's interesting. So other than Atalo, unless you go to that center, nonprofits don't really come to you guys.
Well, it's more about like nonprofits
Yeah.
communicate to a Ware Institute.
So nonprofits communicate to your Ware Center, and that's kind of how you guys find out about
Yes,
opportunities.
exactly.
That's like
Interesting.
our portal.
That's your portal. Interesting. Okay.
But also there are also other connections. I mean, if you are speaking with professors, you're maintaining close relationships with
Mhm.
professors on
Yeah.
campus. They normally have access to a lot of opportunities that you can
Very
get
cool.
involved with.
Very cool.
Like the Spanish department had
Nice.
us provide an opportunity to help communicate
Yeah.
with Cuban doctors who are here.
Nice.
So that was really cool.
So like CASA kind of stuff. Like so you know those people here.
Oh yeah, Casa in Action all.
Gotcha. Well, you seem like somebody who kind of hit the road running when you showed up. So that's very interesting. Where have you guys been able to get involved? Obviously, you said Church World Services. Other than Water Street, have you been able to get involved anywhere?
I know I was an intern at the YMCA, the family
Oh,
YMCA
nice.
over there.
Yeah, like right over by F&M.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
right
yeah.
across there in Harrisburg. And I was there through a program that some of my professors are starting up.
Okay.
It's called the Humanities Initiative.
Nice.
And so what the goal of this was to get students in connection with organizations in the community, to have students and utilize skills that they were learning in the humanities into the liberal arts education and have those skills out there so that they can build community and also be able to gain experience in the field.
Very cool.
So,
Cool.
yeah, that was one thing I was involved in.
Cool. Any other nonprofits you've been involved with, Cheska, other than Church World Services?
CIRAC, are you familiar with them?
CIRAC?
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, I wish I
don't
really
know.
knew what their acronyms stood for. It's like
Interesting.
Citizens, Immigrants, Rights, Alliance, and I don't know what the C is.
That's way too many.
I know. They actually do a lot. So Church World Service works in terms of the community, right? Especially with refugee resettlement, or advocacy cases, going up to Philly and doing that sort. But CIRAC works in a way that they do a lot of education and
Nice.
information. So with
Okay.
CIRAC, I've been able, especially last year, I would go out to Elizabethtown and talk
Wow.
in churches about my story and let
Oh,
people
you've been
know.
around.
Yeah.
Wow. She's the most experienced F&M student I've ever met. She's like, I've been to E-Town. I was like,
F&M
F&M people don't know that E-Town exists.
I
So
don't
wow.
know what that is.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. Very exciting. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, get the camera back rolling. But yeah, we'll get back at it. We are back. This has been a super cool episode. Very knowledgeable. I'm learning a ton. I'm going to let these guys kind of talk about their projects and kind of what they're kind of in the process of doing right now. So Chandi, let's hear about this fashion project.
Yeah. So I've been really into fashion for a while now. It's been like 4 or 5 years, and I'm an artist, and I want to put that to use in the fashion world. I want to eventually have a career in the fashion industry. So in the past few weeks, as I've been applying for internships for the summer and whatnot, I've been looking to get into positions within the fashion industry,
Mm-hmm.
but it's really difficult. It's
Yeah.
not easy to get into those positions, and they're not readily available like
Mm.
that. So I decided to start my own project, create my own opportunity,
Yeah.
I guess. And I sent out an application to recruit interns to work with me. I don't have college credit or money to offer,
Yeah.
but people who genuinely have a passion for the same thing I do or something similar and want to gain some experience in that field would be able to work with me on this.
Very
And
cool.
so what we'd be doing is creating clothing. And the clothing, what I'm envisioning is something that would break barriers in gender and how clothing is perceived across genders. Because we're in a society where women are expected to wear a certain kind of clothing, and if men wear certain kinds of clothing, they're presumed to be not men.
Mm.
We live in a society like that.
Yeah.
So like, why does your clothing have to say much about who you are as a person? Like,
Yeah.
why can't it be fashion? We have to break these boundaries
Mhm.
to get rid of some of those stereotypes. So I think that's the main goal of this project, and I'll be working on it from this spring until next spring, and hopefully by next spring, I could be able to curate a fashion show and have
Wow.
it showcased.
Very cool.
Yeah,
I think you hit on something very interesting with like gender normative clothes
yeah,
and like how do we kind of break down this idea that like it would be interesting if a guy wore a skirt and he
Yeah.
wasn't gay. Like
Right.
it'd be interesting if like you could just do that, or if you could just wear different types of clothing that symbolize like this is just how I feel today. Like this is just how I want to express myself today. And it doesn't actually mean that like my sexual orientation has changed or that I'm identifying as another person. I'm just a man and today I wanted to wear a skirt.
yeah,
And that's an interesting idea. I like that idea a lot because I think it will kind of like shake people a little bit. I think people will kind of look at it and be like, "Huh, that's really interesting."
yeah.
That like that's how you have it. Have you gotten any interns yet, or is that process still going?
That process is still going. I just released the application last
Yeah.
week, and so people have until up to the end of the month
Very
send in
cool.
those applications. Then I'll select the candidates. I want a diverse group of people who are going to bring ideas from different perspectives, so that we could put these ideas together and have the best that we can give. you know?
Exactly.
And I'm finding inspiration from. This is not new. Like ASAP Rocky,
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, started wearing skinny jeans. Him and the ASAP Mob, and back then, the stereotype was if you're wearing skinny jeans, it means you're gay or something like that. But they changed that, and it became clothing that everyone was wearing.
Yeah.
It did not define a specific group of people. So I think movements like that are very inspirational and break boundaries, and that's the
Yeah.
goal.
I think so too. And I like the work of yours that I've seen so far, like the jacket you showed me.
Yeah.
And I like the direction that your work has, and that it's not just clothing, you know what I mean?
Right.
It has this particular mission and this drive, and it's very true to who you are as a person, I think, to be
Yeah,
honest. Like
definitely.
even like our couple of conversations and the couple times we hung out, it seems like a very good reflection of your nature and who you are. And I'm really excited to kind of like see that come to fruition.
Right.
It's gonna be dope. I mean, I'm gonna be
Facts.
front row for the fashion show.
Facts.
You already
have
know.
to, you have to.
You already know. I'll be a sponsor and
forward for
everything.
Spot right there.
Exactly. Wow. Super exciting. I love that. Cheska, what's going on? So you're the immigration person. I mean, honestly, I know about you a little bit. Like, I mean, that's kind of how I heard about you. It wasn't just like the F&M diversity page. It was a bunch of these immigration circles where you kind of kept popping up, and I was like, this is interesting. So talk to us a little bit about what do you really see accomplishing, because you have 2.5, 3 more years here in Lancaster. What is your goal?
Yeah, so I recently got a scholarship called Rouse, the Andrew Rouse Scholarship, with my institution, which allows me to have $3,000 to spend in any research or academic project that I want to do,
Wow.
or just any personal project in general. And actually, I'm intending to use that money for a project that I've been working on in the last 4 or 5 years, I would say. which I codename right now Project ENS.
Nice.
It's really interesting, but it means Project Education for Non-Citizen Students. And for me, higher ed access is so important. I know there was just recently news about how, rich people and that scandal about higher ed. Let's be honest, that's not something, that we're surprised about. And for me, knowing that I went through the college admission process 3 times,
Wow.
almost to 62 institutions across the nation. I understand the complexity of higher ed and how unfair it can be too.
Yeah.
And so that being said, I also understand how, despite all of the aspects that bring students to want to go to a certain institution, because they don't get admitted to that certain institution, they feel compelled to blame themselves, right? Like, oh, I wasn't smart enough, or this and that. It's especially about intellectual level, which is so totally untrue, right? Because as we could see, there's a lot of money going into these institutions, and for me, it's a matter about, can the business keep up, right? And so that's one of my major projects, actually. That and something that's really sparked in me very recently over the last year and a half because of my mom. So my mom has a lot of medical complications, but a lot of undocumented immigrants in the United States don't have access to healthcare. And so, although there is the ACA, right, the Affordable Care Act, that allows anyone of permanent residence or citizenship to get healthcare in the U.S., we undocumented immigrants cannot receive that. And so the uninsured population in majority is undocumented. And so that being said, especially in Nevada, in states, we have to rely on state healthcare. So in California, you're privileged in that way that if you're undocumented, you can get, California healthcare, right?
Okay.
In Nevada, where I live, my mom can't do that. So every time we go to a clinic visit, that's like a high price to pay for medications every month. And so that being said, for me, healthcare is so important, right?
Yeah.
Your health matters the most. For me, health is number one priority. So what I've been seeking actually this summer is research in healthcare and the immigrant population. Looking at research teams in UCLA and seeing what I can do in terms of digital innovation, right? Because I'm a computer science major, in making it more accessible to immigrants, or also educating policymakers that this is a big issue that's not talked about at all. So that's
interesting. Okay, so both of you are immigrants, right? So both of you are experiencing that. I'd love to hear both of because I'm not going to lie, this is an issue that I care about, but it's not something that I've done extensive research in. It's not something that has been a part of my major stances because I just don't know a lot about it yet. So talk about, I want to hear both of your experiences, hardships. Obviously you talked about your mother, but I think this is a bigger issue in America right now as a lot of people are talking about it. Should we give illegal immigrants health care? Should we give them opportunity to these things, which seem like basic human rights? It seems like it shouldn't even be a question. Of course we should give undocumented people health care because people don't deserve to die. Right. But obviously there's arguments on the other side. So just talk about your story and, give us a little bit backstory on that side of you real quick.
So my family's here. We got here 5 years ago, and being an immigrant in this country, it's really difficult to start your whole life new. It's a difficult process. I mean, moving from place to place, switching between jobs, not finding a stable job. My parents go through all of that constantly. My mom just got another job, a new job, and she's working really long hours, really late in the night, and it's really difficult for her, and that bothers me. It affects me mentally as well because I'm constantly worrying about my family back home. I'm not being able to take care of them properly, and then they have to be working so hard. And also my brother, he has special needs. He has disability. He has disabilities that require him to be having more attention and more medical attention specifically. And with the the new laws or the policies that were put in place, like he can't afford the medications that he needed anymore. So like that's making it very difficult for him to like prosper and be a human as he should be, and live comfortably. So it's really frustrating that access to healthcare is so difficult and difficult especially for immigrants in this country. It makes me sad. It makes me not want to be here sometimes.
Interesting.
But,
Yeah.
Well, I think the political landscape that we're currently in terms of immigration is so hostile.
Yeah.
I don't even think hostile is the best word to describe it, right?
It's brutal.
It's literally inhumane. I think that's the best word.
It is the best word.
And I think for me, I come from a perspective of someone who's undocumented, right? And so the way that I got into politics and community organizing was because my presence itself is political, right?
Yeah.
And so knowing that every single day, every single year, I would hear about these acts, these laws, and not even laws, bills, right? Legislation that's being introduced that's making me and my family political footballs in the system, right?
Yeah.
Bargaining chips, essentially. Should we have the border wall? Give these DACA folks something, right?
Yeah.
And trade. And I think in that way, often undocumented youth are pinned against everyone in the immigrant world, right? It's like, if you want to help undocumented youth, we have to do something against immigrants at least, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's completely unfair. And for me, in that position, whenever I go down to DC, which I'm doing actually next week, I say, honestly, I'd rather be in this position forever than have a wall, than have more restrictions for other immigrants coming in, right? Because although I want to be a citizen of the U.S., right? Although I want healthcare, I want healthcare for my mom. I don't want it to be in the sacrifice of millions of people.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's really become this environment that's incredibly inhumane, and in respect, not really acknowledging that immigrants are human, right? And we're used as those bargaining chips in the political system, in this, Democratic versus Republican debate, because immigration was always a bipartisan issue up until nearly 2015, coming into the 2016 presidential election, where now it's only really a Democratic issue.
Exactly.
So that's problematic in its own way.
Yeah. The parties in and of themselves are all problematic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't... I feel like the Trump-Hillary election really just tore everything apart. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. And I think that's moving. And I think that should be at least somewhat hard for people who don't have to experience that to hear. Like, I never had to experience that, so that's hard for me to hear. That there are people who are actually just trying to live their normal lives. Like you said, your brother. Like, that's serious. Like, we know people with special needs, they need those accesses. It's not like, they can go without them. And so I think you're right. This is a bigger issue than just a party. This is a bigger issue than just... we give one thing to undocumented, so we take one thing. Like, we need something here that's down the middle or something like that. I don't you know this better than I, but there has to be something that there has to be some break in what's going on, because there's this especially with the wall. I think there's this like division that I can't even see past, because it's almost like if they don't get the wall, then they're like, well, we'll take that, and I don't know how we trade off life so often. And I feel like that's a very American thing to trade off lives.
Putting value on life like that, that's not something you should be doing.
Exactly. I mean, you can trace this all the way back to slavery in terms of like trading off lives. So yeah, I mean, it's almost like they found a new way to hurt people. It's crazy. It literally, it seems like, all right,
incarceration to everything.
I was like, people are getting mad about the prison system. Let's find something new. It's awful. What are some ways listeners, people can actually help this situation? What can we do to even be involved? How do we leverage our ability to vote? These things, like, what should we be looking for?
I think most importantly, people need to speak up. People need to your voice is very important and it's powerful. And together, collaboratively, as communities, if you're bringing your voice together and demanding certain changes, it is definitely there in the future. Like it's feasible, you know.
Yeah.
But if people are ignoring the problem and not coming together in these ways to make these changes, then it's really difficult. But it's also a very difficult question to answer. Like, we're asking how to solve all these problems, and and like in some of my classes, we're looking at these problems from different philosophical lenses.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is some really huge trouble that we gotta solve. But like, you see that it's not easy and it's not gonna take a short time. We gotta be really patient with it.
Yeah. And that dedication is really hard for people, especially in this like age of woke. I hate this age of woke so much because it's a lot of social justice people who really want quick results, but social justice is not quick results. These things take a lot of time. But yeah, I mean, again, you're somebody who works in this like every day. So what are some ways that, you know, people can get involved? What are some things that people can do from home and voting? Like, what should we be watching out for?
Yeah, I think the first, I definitely agree with Chandi, right? You speaking out is so important. And that's coming from someone who speaks out a lot, right? They don't want to hear the same voice over and over again. They're like, it's Cheska again. I get that a lot, actually. So when you see a diversity of folks speaking out on the same issue, right, especially if you're a constituent of a certain representative, they're more likely to take on that as a policy issue for them. And so I think politics is so important in that way that, you know, policy really does affect a lot of people, right? It affects everybody, actually. And so people don't recognize that. And I think with media, we get so overwhelmed with all these negative news that we often want to just mute it, but we can't mute it, okay? I think the first thing for me is what I recommend is inform yourself, get yourself educated. Because if you're not educated about something, you don't know how to fight against or for it, right? And so for you to support a certain, you know, program or set of individuals, you would need to know what you're fighting for, right? So that's the first thing, or what the issue is. And then the second is storytelling. I say this, I'm a storyteller. Tell your story. Tell the stories of your family, your friends, people that you know have been affected by something, because that really transcends politics. It moves people.
I've been saying this for years because I work in race. I mean, I've been doing, you know, racial divide stuff for the last couple of years, and that's what I do. I tell my story. You know, I talk about being raised in a white family. I talk about what it was like for me to go through that identity crisis. You know, that you're right. Storytelling, it breaks all barriers because you're with somebody. It's vulnerable. It's real. It's not, you know, political. You know, hype. I don't even know how to describe what I'm trying to say. But like, it's not like some just political thing. It's real. It's vulnerable.
No one can argue with your story.
Exactly.
No one can argue with your story.
It makes connection on an emotional level because people can connect with you and your experiences in ways that, without telling your story, you cannot have that emotional connection. And our emotions are very powerful. Appealing to people's emotions is very powerful. We cannot take that for granted.
And very true. The third thing, right? Inform and then say and then do. Right? Is do something. And it doesn't have to be big. It can be the smallest thing that you can think of. And I think empowering yourself to take action is so important because you know you have power then. Right? Because a lot of people, what I often hear is like, they don't care, or I don't know what I can do, or I don't know if my effort is enough. Your effort at the slightest is enough. Your presence is enough, right? And so just knowing that fact and empowering people in that way to take action is so important because, again, the accumulation of things are so important in these movements. It takes such a long time, but the reason that we get there at the very end is because these smaller steps has gained us into this bigger area.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow. Amazing. This was super helpful, and I think it was super informative for not only me but people who listen. I really appreciate you guys sharing your stories and your vulnerability, especially with your family, because I know those things can be hard to share. And I just want to thank you guys again for coming up. We're gonna wrap it up here, but yeah, thank you again for coming. You guys shared a lot of things about FNM and about your story and about all these things that were really helpful for me to learn, and it was exactly what I kind of wanted to get out of today. It's just kind of hearing you guys and your experience. So thank you again for being here, for sharing. It meant a lot. And
Thank you. This was so
Yeah.
much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys
Yeah.
had a good time.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, no problem. So this was episode 7, a very big exclusive. Artist, celebrity politician. You'll hear both of these names in the next couple of years. I already know it.
I
So
appreciate that.
so I'm
I
glad
need that energy.
I'm glad I got them early. That's the thing. If I wouldn't have called these people now, I would have never called them. So thank you guys again. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week.